Okay, you can turn off the show lights now. Thank you. Very good. Perfect. So just so you know, we'll be recording this on video and audio. So we're going to create a memory here for you, and I'll be able to get you a copy of this. All right? We're not quite started yet. We're just, when he gives me the thumbs up, then I'll go into show mode.
Flip the switch.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to be here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to How to Write a Best-Selling Book. Not only how to write a best-selling book, but how to make it a bestseller. And I'm so excited to be able to teach you this concept because many years ago, when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I decided I wanted to write a book. And I have no idea it was going to become a bestseller. It was just part of my dream to write a book. I sat in Stephen Covey's class here at Brigham Young University here in Provo, Utah, when I was in my 20s. And Covey was a professor here at BYU, and he was fantastic and very, very popular. It was hard to get into his class. He had hundreds and hundreds of kids in his class, and I was one of the ones that squeaked in, and he had us write down our goals, and one of my goals was to write a book. Now, I'm in my 20s, and I have no idea why I'm writing down that as one of my goals. The other two goals were how to scuba dive and how to parachute. So I did both of those two things, and then I kind of forgot about the goal, and I went off to create my fortune. Graduated from BYU here in 1974. It was a terrible recession at the time, so very few people were getting jobs. I was one of the very few people in my class, my MBA class, to not find a job. I sent out applications to the 30 major corporations in the world: General Foods, General Electric, General Mills, General Motors, and generally every company I could think of, and they all generally sent me back a letter saying, we generally don't like you, and you can generally go drop dead. And they sent me a letter to that effect, to which I still have that letter, by the way, from those 30 major corporations. And I was devastated because I had graduated with my MBA expecting to be, financially successful and to have my job like my dad. He'd worked for his entire life and got his gold watch, and I thought that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Well, didn't work out that way. I had read a book that had changed my life. Now, how many of you have read a book that's changed your life? See, raise your hands on that. Books change people's lives. Sometimes they change people's generations of lives, and in my case, I read two books. The first book was called Think and Grow Rich, and some of you have heard of that book before. How many of you read Think and Grow Rich? See, raise your hands. That's kind of like the Bible of entrepreneurs. And the second book was called How I Turned $1,000 into $1 Million in Real Estate in My Spare Time by William Nickerson. I saw this on the bookshelf of my brother-in-law, who was 42 years old, when he got brain cancer and died. And when we were there at my sister's house for the funeral, I saw these two books on his bookshelf. And I decided to get both of them and read them, and it kind of changed the direction of the way I thought about I was going to do my future. I thought I was maybe going to work as an employee like my father, but when nobody would hire me, I said, well, why don't we just skip over the job part? Let's just go become a millionaire. Let's just go buy a bunch of real estate. And since I was single at the time, that's exactly what I did. I graduated in here and couldn't find a job, so I started taking that $1,000 that my dad had given me for my graduation present, and I turned that $1,000, just like the author said in his book, into $1 million in real estate in my spare time. And it changed my life, obviously. And then I decided I wanted to write a book about it, and the idea to write a book just bubbled up into my brain because I'd written it down as a goal. Sometimes you write goals down and they eventually come to fruition. And I was excited to be able to write a book, but before I did what many infopreneurs do. I taught a little seminar. And the seminar was to generate a little bit extra cash flow. It was called How to Buy Real Estate with Little or No Money Down. And the title resonated. And it was right here in Provo, Utah, where I ran that little tiny classified ad in our local newspaper here. And that started to generate people coming to my little seminar. My first seminar was 100 people times $100. And when I really counted up the money at the very end, that's $10,000 for a one-day seminar. And now, back in 1978, that's still a lot of money today, frankly, 10 grand for a day. And I was saying, this is kind of cool. I wonder if we should raise the price a little bit. Let's raise it to 200. And then I attracted 200 people, and that's $40,000 for a weekend. And that's serious money. Then we went to Los Angeles. I ran a big, huge, full-page ad and charged people $500, and 200 people showed up. And that's $100,000 for a weekend. And now we're talking serious money. So by about this time, I'd figured out that the concept worked. And you guys are going to be learning about how you find a concept that resonates with your audience so that they put you above everybody else. And my seminars started to become so popular that the person who used to work for Nickerson, the guy who inspired me to make some money in real estate with his book, that his seminars now were competing with my seminars. And when I came out with the concept of nothing down, it was a revolutionary concept. How do you buy real estate with little or no money down? And competing against all the other competitors in the real estate space in seminar world, I put everybody else out of business. Even my mentor, at least I never met him, but his book, How I Turned $1,000 into $1 Million, I put him out of business. And the president of his company came to me while I was in Los Angeles and saw me promoting my thing, and he said to me, we've had a falling out with the other guys in the other company, and would you like to be famous? Would you like to be big? And what am I going to say to that? Let me think about that. Sure. And he said, well, I know exactly how to do that because we've just done that with your competitor. And so Roger Larson and I formed a partnership, and they paid me a royalty. Now I'm going to be teaching you about royalties. Royalties is licensing your ideas and information to somebody else who does all the work, and they pay you a royalty. Roger said, I'll pay you 10.3% of the revenue, gross revenue that we generate for every person who sits in the seminar using your name and using your information and your techniques. And I said, that sounds good. And so in 1979, we had our first seminar in Seattle. And as they say, the rest is history. They taught 103,000 people over the next 6 years at $500 a pop. And they generated, well, 100,000 times 500 is $50 million. And I got 10.3% of that. Now, while they were doing all of this, I had this idea that maybe I should write a book. Remember, I thought I would write a book about how to succeed in real estate investing. And so I had been writing while they're doing the seminars. I wrote my book, Nothing Down, How to Buy Real Estate with Little or No Money Down. And it came out at the exact right time. It came out in January of 1980. Now, that's 41 years ago. And yet, today, I still get royalty checks from this book that I wrote 41 years ago. And it's become the all-time best-selling real estate book in history as a hardcover. Now, I didn't realize that it was going to become all that successful, to tell you the truth. I just wanted to write a book and see what would happen, right? But it hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And it stayed on the list for the next 6 years while we were doing the seminars. It stayed on the list. So it stayed on the list 56 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. Then I wrote Creating Wealth a couple of years later, and now the seminars are still going big time. And now I got the chance to write rather than me going out and teaching. They had speakers that were, selling my seminar. So I stayed home and I just collected the checks. Every Tuesday I would get a check for $25,000 to $50,000 to $75,000 every Tuesday. And I would stay home and write. And so the second book I wrote was called Creating Wealth. And it also hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, 26 weeks on the New York Times. So over 100 weeks of all the books I've written have been on the New York Times bestseller list. The game has changed, and so I'm going to be teaching you how the game has changed so that you can enjoy it and generate the most amount of revenue for you, right? Becoming a New York Times bestseller is a nice idea, but it's extremely difficult. And I'll tell you why my 2 books became #1. Because while I was promoting the books, I would go on the media, go on the radio, talk shows, newspapers, magazines, everything else. At the same time I'm doing that kind of promotion, my seminar company, Rogers Seminar Company, was going into 2 or 3 cities per week and spending in between $50,000 and $100,000 in promotion to be able to put people into seats. And in $500 seminar, people would come to the seminar, the freebie, the 90-minute seminar, and they would go, well, why would we spend $500 when we can go down and buy a $20 book at the bookstore? So anybody who couldn't afford the $500 went and bought the books. So in 3 or 4 cities a week, hundreds of people are buying these books in 3 or 4 different cities. And so literally it generated the buzz and the constant selling of books throughout the United States. So the New York Times tracks that, and they can see that these are individual sales from individual people, and hundreds of them every single week. And so in terms of becoming a #1 New York Times bestseller, we kind of manufactured it, which is an interesting idea. Can you manufacture a #1 New York Times bestseller? Well, if you have a seminar company that's going week after week after week, and you're reaching out to hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people a week, yeah, it becomes kind of like organic in a strange way. To do that today, it's to have a generic book, a general book that reaches lots of people in all the bookstores is really, really hard to do. And really the question is, do you really need to do it? To have a New York Times bestseller, I can give you the name of the guy who will do it for you. It'll cost you $45,000. But if you want a #1, if you want a bestseller, New York Times bestseller, they have 15 titles. So if you want to be number 15 on them, you want to spend $45,000, you could do that for probably 1 week. And then you would say to the world, you're a New York Times bestseller. But more than likely, you won't need to do that. If you want to have some cred, then you can be #1 on the largest bookstore in the world, and Amazon.com, and you can be #1 in your niche extremely easily, frankly, to be #1 in your niche. So you can say you're a #1 Amazon bestseller. Most people really kind of don't know what the New York Times or the Amazon, the ordinary person doesn't really know the difference, to tell you the truth. And even for you to be #1 in your niche, you'll probably only be that way for maybe 1 hour, because Amazon changes the numbers every hour. So during 1 hour, on 1 day, in 1 year, you will tell all your friends to go buy your book that's niched into a tiny niche on Amazon. There are hundreds of niches, and your book will be in a niche, and it will be #1 on Amazon. There's no doubt about that, so it's very easy to do. But that's not why we write a book. And we're going to get into that today. Are you writing a book because you're trying to help your business? What's the purpose? Why are you writing it? Why do you want to write it? And so we'll cover all of that. Point is, having been a #1 New York Times bestselling author and having reproduced that several times, having been on the list several more times after that, without having a seminar operation. I've done it many times, and some of you may be able to do that, but all of you are going to create streams of income from your book, right? So we're going to talk about how you write a best-selling book. And these are some of my books. The top left two, Nothing Down for the 2000s and Creating Wealth. Those are #1 New York Times bestsellers. Multiple Streams of Income was a New York Times bestseller. The 1 Minute Millionaire was a New York Times bestseller. The 4 Maps of Happy, Successful People is the last book that I wrote with my son Aaron. We made it a #1 Amazon bestseller in our niche. And so we'll be doing all of that together here. It's been translated into dozens of languages, these books, all around the world. And it's really wonderful to get on an airplane and you're flying to some other country and somebody comes up to you and taps you on the shoulder and says, are you Robert Allen? Yeah, I read your book. It changed my life. So rather than having a #1 book of any sort, what you want is stories. You want success stories. When your audience reads your book, you want them to succeed, to use your information in your book to change their life. When you change their life, you change a generation of lives. And it's wonderful. And I've had hundreds of times people have come up to me over the last few decades, hundreds and hundreds of times. And they looked me in the eye and they said, you changed my life. Well, obviously I gave them information and I gave them a catalyst, but they had to do the work. And the work is hard. And your information will be a catalyst to other people too. And maybe you will be internationally successful. And over the last 10 years, when 2008 happened, for our seminar business, when we're teaching a seminar on how to make money in real estate, and everybody is living in a house that's underwater and has no desire whatsoever to buy real estate, seminar companies don't survive that. And real estate cycles are like that. You know, it's a feast or famine in the seminar business. And so our seminar business, closed down in 2011, and I went to travel the world. Because not everybody was interested in my message at that time, but when I go to Russia, my book is translated into Russian. And I talk to people on multiple streams of income in Russian, and I get it. I'm translated. People translate me. And they love the message. Their message can be translated into any language. When I go to China, I'm famous in China for these crazy books that I've written, and Japan, Australia, Italy, all over the world. Wherever I go, these books are printed, and people have success stories and all. So I'm just trying to plant in your mind the possibility that you would be an international best-selling author, and that there are 7 billion people on the planet. So it's time for you to think a little bigger. And that's what we're doing here today. So the book that I'm going to give all of you is called Idea to Income, 8 Steps to Turn Your Ideas into Exponential Income. This is my latest book. It was written last year. It's a different kind of book, and I'm going to be teaching you how to do this book, this type of book. My normal books are 50,000 to 80,000 words. This one is 15,000 words. It's shorter because the world has changed. People would rather read a shorter book. Their attention span is just much, much shorter. But I'm going to be teaching you how to write a book like this in your subject matter, and then I'll be showing you why this is a revolutionary book. I'm going to give a copy of it to all of you, and when you read it through, you're going to see the concepts I'm going to be teaching you found in this book. So if anybody is interested in writing a book, turning information into income, this is the exact blueprint. And I'm going to be using that blueprint to teach you here this week. And then I'm going to give you a copy of the book for you to model the book you're going to write. So in this book, I've learned over many years that I want to make sure that there's a way for my reader to get me their contact information. When I wrote Nothing Down, 1 million people bought that book. but my name and my address and my telephone number was not in that book. So 1 million people got a copy of my book and had no way to reach me. They didn't know how to get to me. It was a stupid mistake. It was one of the 12 stupid mistakes that you will all make unless you don't make them, and I made them for you, right? This was a multi-million-dollar stupid mistake because I didn't have any way to reach the people who read my book. So now this last book, now this has been 40 years later, this book has many ways to connect with the reader. Because if you want to turn idea to income, you have to have the database. You have to build a database. The second book that I wrote is called, the fourth one over from the left is called The Challenge. The first book that I wrote was called Nothing Down, sold 1 million copies. The second book I wrote was Creating Wealth, #1 New York Times, sold 1 million copies. The third book was called The Challenge. The publisher gave me $500,000 advance to write that, and I took a couple of years of my life to write it, and it came out. I was very excited about it because it talked about me going to an unemployment line and selecting people who were broke, out of work, and discouraged. And in 2 days' time, I'll teach them the secrets of wealth. In 90 days, they'll be back on their feet with $5,000 cash in the bank, never set foot in an unemployment line again. And when I did that channel, that was the subtitle of that book, by the way, and nobody bought this book. 60,000 people bought this book compared to 1 million people who bought Nothing Down and Creating Wealth. So that's 6% of what the other two books had done. First of all, it was a bad title, The Challenge. Do you walk into a bookstore looking for a challenge? No, terrible title. So this is a mistake that I made, which is one of the stupid mistakes that we'll be talking about for you here. And the title sucked. And it was a very, very expensive mistake. Now, the publisher still wrote me a $500,000 check, and I spent it. And I didn't have to give it back. And then it was such a bad book that they literally gave me the rights back to the book and say, we don't even want your book. You can take it back. It's yours. And they write off $500,000. But I had made a very smart decision in this third book that rather than being nameless and faceless and addressless and telephoneless, I had planted in this book about 30 places where if you'd like a free copy of the Blue Vase tape, the audio cassette called the Blue Vase Story, that I had shared with the people that I had been teaching in the unemployment lines, would you like a copy of that? I'll send you the audio cassette. Free. Don't even send me any money. Just give me your name and address. And then in another place, about a few chapters later, by the way, there's a summary wall chart that I've created for you. Would you like it? Just, here's my address, here's my phone number, here's how do you reach me, send me, or yada, yada, yada. And then a few bits later, there was 30 places where I've been enticing the reader to contact me. Now, in Creating Wealth and Nothing Down, we had gathered very few names for our database. And 1 million copies of both of those books had gathered almost no names. But in this third book, which was my worst book, still is my worst book ever, frankly, I gathered about 20,000 people sent me their contact information. Out of the 60,000 people, 20,000 of them sent me their contact information. Now I have a database of how I had taught people from the unemployment lines how to make $5,000 in 90 days, and these 20,000 people read that story, and they said, would you do that for me? And I had my team call them all, of course, and 5,000 people came to my 5-day wealth retreat based upon that book called The Challenge. What's $5,000 times 5,000 people? $25 million. So I turned this loser book into a huge amounts of money, and I learned a huge amount of lessons. So today I'm going to be sharing with you the 12 stupid mistakes that beginning authors make, and I have made them all. And I want to make sure you don't have to pay the same price that I did. But I learned from my lessons, although there were expensive lessons to learn. So this book here is the model that I would recommend that you write your next book on. And it'll be a shorter book. Doesn't have to be a big one. If you want to expand your book into 3 or 4 times more content, you can do that. But I'm going to suggest to you, as one of the stupid mistakes that people usually make, is they assume that the publisher is going to do all the work, and that they assume that the publisher is going to take their manuscript and say, yes, no problem, we'll be happy to publish your book. What they want is a platform. They want somebody with a platform, meaning who are gathering and building a database. So this book is a platform builder. This book means you'll generate not a lot of names. In my case, it was 5,000 names. What if you only had maybe, well, do the same numbers that I did. 20,000 people get your ebook. 5,000 of them give you $5,000. Would that be okay with you? Now you've built a database. Now the publishers can come to you and you say, I've sold 20,000 copies of my book, and I have a constantly building list from my database. Now the publishers will publish your book. But don't make the same stupid mistakes that I did at the beginning. Publishers want all the rights. They'll take all of the power, and they'll leave you with a little royalty. Not going to make that mistake, and we'll talk about that as well. So, you want to be a best-selling author? Here's the Bestsellers Hall of Fame. So Think and Grow Rich is number 1. By the way, I'm going to give these PowerPoints to all of you. You don't have to take any pictures or anything else. I'll give you all of the PowerPoints we're going to use. So Think and Grow Rich, it's the biggie. It's probably above 70 million now. And as you scan down there, it looks, how many of those do you have in your library? Some of them were published in 1892. And some of them were published more recently. How many of you have read at least 2 or 3 of those books yourself? Have those in your library? Yeah. The real question you should ask yourself is why? Why did I buy that book? Why did you buy that book? You need to really understand why people take money out of their pocket to buy a book. Because they're going to do the same thing with your book. When they see your book, they're going to decide that they want to spend money on your book or not. And this is the bestseller. Now you'll notice that my name is not up there. But my mentor, Stephen Covey, is number 9 up there. And Wayne Dyer, The Erroneous Zones, 35 million copies. See, it's done in 1976. In 1978, I went to the booksellers convention called Book Expo to offer my manuscript to some publisher. I was just a beginning author, and somebody told me that I should go to the booksellers convention because all the publishers were there. And so I went as a beginning author and took my manuscript there, gave it to several of the publishers, and they were giving out books. Authors who are being published come to these conventions, and the publishers give away free copies of the books to the booksellers to get them excited about buying, putting the books in the stores. Wayne Dyer was there giving out copies of Your Erroneous Zones. And I, as a beginning kid, went up to him and was just so enamored with meeting Wayne and learning from his success. He's no longer with us now, but he wrote many, many, many books since then. So this is the Bestseller Hall of Fame. Some of the best-selling nonfiction series of all time, Chicken Soup for the Soul, has sold 500 million copies. This is by far and away the biggest selling series of books in the history of the world. He's my co-author on The 1 Minute Millionaire, Cash in a Flash, Cracking the Millionaire Code. So I know a lot of the stories behind that, how that became a #1 New York Times bestseller. Men Are From Mars. I've met John Gray, Og Mandino, got a nice letter from Og. Kiyosaki, I brought Kiyosaki to Japan with me to speak to 11,000 people in 2018, and he stood up on the stage and he said, it was really wonderful, I should show it to you. He said to these 11,000 Japanese people, he said, in 1988, my wife and I were struggling, and I found this book called Multiple Streams of Income. No, it was nothing. It was nothing. It was creating wealth. It was creating wealth. It was creating wealth. And I said to my wife, Kim, you go do this. This is how to make money. So you need to buy one house a year for 10 years, 2 houses a year for 10 years, and you will be financially free. So Kim, you go do this. And so she went and bought 20 houses in 18 months. He says, he stood around the stage and he says, today we own 7,000 properties. So I had a lot of influence in a lot of different places. Ken Blanchard on the 1 Minute Manager series. So your book, you ought to plant that thought in there. Could your book be a chicken soup type book, where it's not just your message in one story, but could be branched out into Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, Chicken Soup for the one-eyed, whatever person's soul. Your book, could it be serialized like that, right? So here's Mark and I with the 1 Minute Millionaire. Sometimes when you join with somebody who's more famous than you, it's a good thing to do. Mark and I had been friends for years, and I'd actually hired him to come speak at one of my events. Paid him a speaking fee, and then he had a marriage ceremony every year with his wife, Patty, and he would invite his friends to come watch them get married again every year. And it would be a big bash and lots of food and lots of fun people, and I would go every year and I would say, Mark, we need to write a book together. He said, what should we call it? I says, The 1 Minute Millionaire. He said, oh, that's a good title. I can't write a book because I have contractual problems with my publisher, but that would be a nice idea. Then one day I decided we need to link up with a #1 New York Times bestseller. So I called his secretary and I said, where's Mark flying to lately, you know? He's going to Vancouver. Oh, really? When is he going? She told me the date. She says, what's his seat number? She had his ticket and she had his seat assignment. And so I bought the first class ticket sitting right next to him on the way to Vancouver. I said, we show up at the airport. Bob, what are you doing here? Where are you going? I'm going to Vancouver. He said, I'm going to Vancouver. Where are you sitting? I'm sitting right here. Oh, it's right next to me. He still doesn't know that, the answer. And so on the way to Vancouver, I said, we need to write a book together. And he said, I can't do it. I can't. I'm contractually forced by my publisher not to do this without their permission. And so being a creative person, I said, well, what else could we do? He said, what about a movie? I've always wanted to do a movie. So we literally wrote the screenplay, flying to Vancouver, the story of a woman, and he had a chicken soup story of some guy who was driving on a road in the middle of the snowstorm, and he went off the road, and the car crashed, and he was in the middle of nowhere, and it was snowing, and it was cold, and his phone was there, and called his wife and she didn't answer, and he left her a message on her voicemail, and then they found him dead. And so at least they had a message from him, right? So Mark said, what if we used a story like that? And we created the story of a woman, let's say a woman that loses everything, and then she has 2 children, and and we just made it up on the way to Vancouver. A woman that needed to make $1 million in 90 days to save her children. And so we started writing a screenplay. And have we ever written a screenplay before? No. I have no idea what we're doing. We went and bought some Final Draft screenplay software, and 2 guys are writing the screenplay, having never done it before, and we get a third of it done. I didn't even show it to anybody who was a professional, but we thought it would be a great story, and we flew up to San Francisco to talk to Mark Victor Hansen's agent, literary agent, and we said to Jillian, here's our story, and we want to have a movie. And she said, you can't do a movie without a book. Where's your book? And by this time, Mark had a contractual fight with his publisher and had broken away from the publisher, and now we could do a book. So we took the screenplay and scrapped it. We put the 1 Minute Millionaire story on one side and the Millionaire System on the other. It's a 2-sided book. If you have a copy of it, you'll see what it's like. It's very different. It's revolutionary, frankly. And Jillian went to New York, and because he's more famous than I am, we got $1 million advance, in advance, cash, to write this book. That's why it's important to link yourself up with somebody who's a little more famous than you are, right? So this is the book that, now, Stephen Covey was my mentor. Now, by this time, I was a #1 New York Times bestseller, and his editor comes to me in my offices here in Provo, Utah, and says, Stephen wants to have a #1 New York Times bestseller like yours. Can you show us how to manufacture a book to become a #1 New York Times bestseller? They showed me the manuscript. But Stephen had also hired from me, away from me, Stephen Covey hired my marketing guy. My marketing guy who knew all my secrets, hired him away, and guess what happened to Stephen Covey's book? So when you see that book, you realize I'm going to take 1% of the credit for that book. And he was a wonderful guy, yep. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, here he is telling me that Creating Wealth was the book that really got him started. Now he has 40 million copies worldwide. Harv Eker, you heard of Harv before. He was one of my early, as he said, Robert Allen's one of my early friends and mentors. His books and seminars inspired me to write my own best-selling books. He came to my seminar, that seminar I talked about, the $5,000 wealth retreat. He spent $5,000 to come to my seminar. And at that seminar, we broke boards with our bare hands to break through our fears. And Harv broke his hand, missed the board, and hit the brick, and broke his hand and went to the hospital. So I have some close relationships with some of these guys up there, right? So there's reasons why you want to be an author. You want to have the credibility of being an author. When you come up to somebody, from now on, you're going to tell them you're an author. What do? You say, I'm an author. It's the first thing you say out of your mouth when somebody asks you what you do, who you are, why. Well, I think I've shared this with you in other contexts, but when somebody hears you're an author, they look at you differently. You just gain an instant level of respect, and it happens instantly when you say you're an author. People look at authors differently, and they respect you immediately. Doesn't matter what kind of titles you have after it. It doesn't matter how much your net worth is. If you say that you're an author, watch what happens. If you have ever never done it before, watch it. Because as a result of today, you're an author. Now you say, well, do you need to have written anything to become an author? Is there a certain amount of rules where you have done a certain amount of things and then you can call yourself an author? No, you're going to write right now the first sentence of your book. Everybody take out a blank piece of paper or notepad or wherever you want to write. What do you want to write? At the top of that, I want you to write the name of your book. Now remember, you can change it any time, but right now for this first time out, write down at the top of the page, what is the title of your book? We will be actually testing your title tonight. So give me the best shot, because the rest of your authors here are going to tell you whether it is successful or whether it sucks. And they'll tell you immediately, I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so you're an author, right? So what is the subtitle of your book? You've got to have a subtitle. And the subtitle is sometimes more descriptive and more exciting than the main title. What's your subtitle? Do we have a bar stool somewhere? Can you bring it down for me? Thank you. Okay? Now, what's the subject that you want to write about? So when I go into Google, what subject will I be looking under? Will it be under marital relationships? Will it be under flipping houses? Will it be under personal finance? Will it be under, what's the subject matter going to be? Okay? Now, I want you to write, and I'm going to give you only 1 minute, but I want you to write for 1 minute the first sentence of your book. And I'll count to 3 and I'll get you started here. You're just going to write, right? Get ready, get set, go. Stop. Count up the number of words that you wrote down. And during that 1 minute, count up the number of words you wrote during that 1 minute. How many words did you write?
15.
Everybody count? Everybody got the numbers?
15.
Okay. Everybody raise your right hand. Leave your hand up until I say the number of words you wrote. So if you wrote 10 words or less, you can lower your hand. 20 words or less, you can lower your hand. 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 50, how many words did you write? 53. How many words did you write? How many words did you write? 50, 50. He wrote 53. So 53 words. Now, I gave you an assignment, did I not? To write as many words as you could, and I didn't ask you if they would need to be good words. I just needed to have you write down words. So don't you think he earns at least $1 a word? So, there you go. Thank you very much.
Can we parlay this?
No, I'm gonna write a check. So no, that's yours. You can parlay it. So $1 a word, right? So when I write a book, how much money do I make per word? See, let's see. I wrote the challenge book. It had about 50,000 words in it, and I made it $25 million. So how much is 50,000 words divided into $25 million? Somebody calculate that for me. I've never done that before. $500. Is it 500 or 50? It's $500 a word. Now, what I'm teaching you now, most authors never understand. They don't understand that there is a funnel we create when we reach people who read our books. Publishers don't understand this. Publishers make people famous and don't get any of the back end. So they get only the $20 for the book. And they have to be profitable on the $20 or $25 or $30, and maybe some audio cassettes for $30 or $50. But what about the $500, $5,000, $50,000 that a few tiny percentage of people would like to give you to have you be their mentor? In other words, $500 a word. Now you only got $1. But we want to take that $1 into $500. And that's different than maybe what you expected when you came here. You thought, well, I'm going to become a best-selling author. Well, you don't have to be a best-selling author and still make $25 million, because the challenge book was a disaster when it came to the publishing world. It was a total failure, but it was an information product, not a book. And that's one of the mistakes that most authors make. So, advantages: accelerates your personal growth. It forces you to dig out and organize the golden nuggets of your own personal experience and wisdom. It forces you to learn what you've learned, to dig it out and go, now what have I learned? How can I save people the mistakes that I've made so that they can become more successful? Which is what I'm doing with you here today. I'm sharing what the mistakes I've made that have cost me fortunes. This is what you'll be doing in your book, right? Creates a legacy. Now, do you want to leave as a legacy a self-published piece of crap? Is that what you want to leave as a legacy? And can you tell the difference between a real book and a self-published piece of crap? Most of them are self-published pieces of crap, and I will not allow you to do that. It's like fingers on a chalkboard for me. When I see a book that looks like a self-published piece of crap, you look inside, it looks terrible on the inside because they want to say that they're an author. No, this just promotes how stupid you are when you do it in the wrong way. We'll not allow you to do that. We want you to leave a legacy that you're proud of, right? You get immediate respect from everybody. Anybody you introduce yourself to, instant respect. The most impressive business card ever. You'll probably be handing out business cards here. What will people do with your business cards? They'll be gone by the time they get home. You're forgotten because they're piled over all the other thousands of cards they've got. They take them home, they pile them in a little pile, put a rubber band around them, put them in a shoebox underneath their bed until they move to another apartment, and then they throw your card away. Your card is the worst business card. The best business card is your book, that you give them and autograph a copy of it to them. They'll never throw it away. They'll take it from apartment to house to mobile home, wherever they move, your book goes with them. In order to throw a book away, you know what happens when you throw a book away? You go to hell. Because people don't throw books away. It's just horrible. But have you ever thrown a book away and you feel really guilty about it? Like, oh, one day, and then one day, a few years later, you go, I threw that book away. We just can't do it. So the best business card you ever give somebody. This is why, as a business person, you should have copies of this book you give away to everybody. They just never forget you, right? Wonderful gifts for friends, family, and colleagues. And the microscopic possibility that you could author the next Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or Chicken Soup for the Soul. There's a tiny possibility that some of you in this room could have a massive, mega bestseller on your hands, right? You want to be a public speaker, not without a book. How many of you want to be public speakers? Let me see, raise hands on that. You're not going to do it without a book. Because people just want to know. You just add that credibility to it, and then you get multiple streams of income, right? So here is one of the best bookstores, libraries in the world. This is New York City's public library. You ever been in it before? Millions and millions of copies in this library. You go inside, it's just beautiful. And above the door of one of the entrances, it says, a good book is the precious lifeblood of a master spirit, embalmed and treasured up on purpose to a life beyond life, said John Milton. Your book will have a life beyond your life. People will find your book in a used bookstore, and it'll still change their life. I was in Japan and was introduced to a multimillionaire in Japan, and he's a wonderful guy. His name is Tetsuya. Tetsuya takes me to lunch in a beautiful hotel in Tokyo. And we're looking out the window of this hotel, and I did not know this story as we're having this nice lunch. And he looks out of this beautiful park, beautiful green trees in the middle of Tokyo, and he said, that was my home. And what do you mean? He said, I was homeless. Really? I lived right there for many months. But one day I stumbled into a used bookstore. And I was looking through the books, and I find a book called Okaman Choja, which is Japanese for the billionaire man, which is the Japanese way of saying multiple streams of income. The billionaire man, Okaman Choja. And he says, I like that title. He starts to read it, and he likes it. It's a pretty darn good book. And he is reading, standing there in the used bookstore, and he says, I need this book. But it's too expensive. So he went to another part of the bookstore and found a lower priced book and took the price tag off of it and put it on to my book, Multiple Streams of Income, for $1, and he was able to get a copy of Multiple Streams of Income and generated multiple streams of income, a multimillionaire. These kinds of stories are real stories. Your book will have a life, and it will give life to other people. It gave him life. It gave him a better life. And so when you write it, you don't want a piece of schlock. You want it to be a message that you really resonate with. It's true for you. So when the people find it, however they find it, right? So I've helped hundreds of people become best-selling authors, and now it's your turn, everyone. I've helped lots of people. Some of them became bestsellers, some didn't, but lots of people have published books as a result of my inspiration. My favorite one is the bottom right-hand corner, How to Meditate with Your Dog. Now, that's a good title. You know, it resonates, right? This is another group of people. All these people have my foreword in their books. So when you Google Robert Allen, you find their book because on Amazon, because it's a foreword on there. So, are you dumb enough to be rich? Bill Barnett. You think that's a kind of a silly title, but this is a killer title. Are you dumb enough to be rich? And has sold tens of thousands of copies, and now he's making it a chicken soup series. Are you dumb enough to be married? Are you dumb enough to be, whatever you're dumb enough to be? But all of these are fun books. Secrets of a Dealionaire by John Lee. John wrote a book. This is a book I helped him write. This was his first book, a foray into it, and then he decided he wanted to write another book. It was a book on credit repair. And he had done a little credit repair work in his previous life, and he said, all these credit repair companies are ripping people off. This is terrible. He said, I'm going to write a book so that people don't get ripped off, have to spend hundreds of dollars a month on some kind of credit report stuff that doesn't work. He was furious. So he writes a book, just throws it off. Not all that impressive, frankly, but the title was good. Secrets that the credit report people don't want you to know, something like that. In fact, somebody Google it. It's for John Lee. He puts it on Amazon. He doesn't expect to make a penny from it. It's just basically a gift to everybody that could buy it, and he could buy it in a digital copy, and it's very inexpensive. And a few months later, he gets a check from Amazon for $60,000. And you go, where did this come from? Well, this book was a runaway bestseller. It didn't make any lists, but it certainly made him some nice cash flow. So you just never know when some. Now, the reason it sold is because Larry King was promoting a credit repair business and was on the television and doing millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of promotion for this credit report thing. And when people went on to Google to find a book about it, they found John Lee's book. So you just never can tell where the confluence of things can work in your favor, right? Here's some more books I've had a hand in. This is the Robert Allen of Italy. Alfio comes to my house in 2006. He says, I want to do what you're doing, but I want to do it in Italy. And so here we are in 2019. He's written all these books. I'm on his board of directors. It's a publicly traded company, and I got stock in his publicly traded company. You just never know where somebody is going to want to be your mentor. You to be their mentor. This guy was bankrupt when he came to my seminar in Singapore, and now he wrote from bankruptcy to multi-millions in 7 years. So there's Andy Tan from China. There's Shinsuke from Japan. His was a Japanese best-selling book from what I coached him how to do. Here's The Empowered Choice by Jin in Singapore. I love this story. Kim Egan. Bob, I wanted to send you a note to thank you personally for your role in transforming my life. I came across multiple streams of income and nothing down a few years ago when I was homeless and living in my office. Within a year of reading your book, I had a multi-million-dollar portfolio. I've gone on to build companies and to completely transform my life. My mission is to help thousands, if not millions, of others to do the same. Thanks to your trainings, I recently released The Power of Real Estate Investing, which has so far achieved 20,000 readers and is helping people worldwide. What happens is when people succeed at something, they want to share their success. And this is exactly what's happened. I've had hundreds of stories like this where people succeeded with real estate investing or something else, and then they instantly want to write a book about it to share their story. That may be the reason that you're doing. This is Tetsuya. This is our homeless guy, and my endorsement made a big success, 40,000 copies. That's Tetsuya in Japan. I love this one too. I'm Brother Jess Rodinas of Cebu, Philippines. I read your book and I implemented the techniques of nothing down here, and I hit the jackpot. I acquired 1.5 hectares and 16 hectares of land with nothing down. We subdivided the land and sold it fast. And because of this, I was encouraged to write a book. I share my life story in the book. I've had 40 business failures and almost 40 years of marriage. If not for your nothing down techniques, I would not rise up again If not for NDT, I would not become a multimillionaire in a very short time because of your NDT. I help a lot of people, church and charitable works. So I didn't know Jess. He just sent this email to me out of the blue. Never heard of him. Not even aware my book is available in the Philippines, frankly. So you're going to plant seeds. Your book is a seed. It will grow a crop of success stories. And this is Are You Dumb Enough to Be Rich? This is Bill Barnett. And Judge Glenda Hatchett, Dare to Take Charge. Glenda's been to my home. Wonderful, wonderful woman. She's still on TV as the judge, right? And then another guy, just last year, I'd never heard of him before, How to Make Big Money in Small Apartments. He was worked in the corporate world, and on a trip to Hawaii on a vacation, he wanted a book to read on the beach, and he went into a bookstore in Hawaii and found a copy of a book on the floor, literally laid face up on the floor of the bookstore, and it was Multiple Streams of Income. He read the book, and he got out of the corporate world almost immediately, started investing in apartments, and now he has his own books. And of course, Ron LeGrand, who is my student, went to my seminar in 1983, and now has read dozens and dozens of books. Mitch Steffen, never heard of him before, bought 45 houses in 1998, and I was on his podcast like 3 or 4 months ago. My Life and 1,000 Houses. So, and this is one of my favorite ones. And when I took your training, I was a broke personal trainer making $20,000 a year, debt up to my eyeballs. You showed me how to write a book called Lose Your Back Pain. And today I'm making $200,000 a month. And there are over 1 million copies of my books in print. This is how you use a book to build your business. He gives this book away online. You can go today to his website, right now today, and you'll see that book that he gives away for free, which many of you will be doing. So creating a best-selling book is not as easy as I make it sound. It takes some work, you know. Guess how many books are self-published this year? In 2013, there were 461,438 books published. Self-published, that means not through a traditional publisher. Self-published. In 2018, 1,677,000. In the year 2021, there'll be over 2 million books, self-published books, will hit the marketplace. Why 2021 is so much higher? Because during the pandemic, people wrote books. What else could they do? They always wanted to write a book, and they just never had been able to do it. So they got stuck at home, and they started to write. So 40% increase. I mean, this is a big. So if you stacked, this is from Stephen Hawking, if you stack the new books being published next to each other at the present rate of production, you would have to move at 90 miles an hour just to keep up with the end of the line. So lots of published books, self-published books. You don't want your book to get lost in 2 million other books. It has to stand out. I'm going to show you how to do that. So you start, you have an idea for a book, you wrote down your idea just now, so that's, everybody's there. Then you got to what? Get a manuscript done. There are a lot of ways of doing that. You could write it. I write all of my own books. I write them word by word, but it takes sometimes a year. My last book, it took me only 90 days though, because it was shorter. So at least 90 days you can get a book done, and your manuscript is finished, and you could either go the route of self-publishing, or you could go the route of traditional publishing. If you go traditional publishing, then the next step would be for you to find an agent. Remember Mark Victor Hansen's agent, Jillian, was able to go to a publisher, and since she had relationships, could get a very large advance. Game has changed. You still would probably need an agent. And finally, you get a publisher. And I've got to find a publisher, somebody who's willing to publish my book. I'm going to tell you not to go with a traditional publisher first. Don't. I want you to go self-published first. I'll tell you why. So I'm now go through all those processes. If I'm successful, it means I've got, how many books would you need to sell in order for you to say you're successful? At least 5,000 copies. And then for it to be amazing to sell 100,000 copies, but to sell 1,000,000 copies, very few people have ever done that. So to be successful, 95% sell less than 5,000 copies. 3% sell more than 10,000. Only 1,000 will sell more than 100,000 in a year. It means of the books that are published, only 1,000 can sell more than 100,000. And less than 100 books sell more than 1,000,000 copies in their first year. This is extremely rare. So it took me a year to pull that off with my first book. I did it twice with 2 years. But since there's more competition, back when I wrote Nothing Down, there were 50,000 hardcover books published that year through the traditional arena. There were very few self-published books. Now today, 40 years later, 2 million books I'm competing with. So you have to have a different strategy, right? So Four Maps is one of the books that I've published on Amazon. We made it #1 on Amazon. And the clarity questions, I'm going to ask you some clarity questions. Question number 1 is, why do you want to do this? Why would you be willing to fly all the way to Provo, Utah, and sit here for a couple of days? What inspires you? What motivated you to do this? Why? Somebody tell me, why? Why are you doing this? Anybody want to share? Yeah, why are you doing this?
I want to help other people.
Hold on one second. Just learning the rules here. And turn that on for me. There we go.
I want to help other people understand who they really are and how powerful they are, that they are limitless beings, that we are all unique expressions of God. God is in us and we're in God. And to be able to reach success faster and avoid a lot of the pitfalls that I had in life, because pretty much I did everything on my own without mentors. And I want to mentor other people to help them reach where they want to be faster.
Does that resonate with anybody here? How many would say that's very similar to what you would have said? Yeah. Anybody else want to share? Why? Why do you want to do that? Brother Washington?
When I found real estate, it changed my life. My first deal changed my life. And that wasn't the expectation. The expectation was to buy a property or two for the next 5 or 10 years. And so what I learned is that real estate is life-changing and powerful, and there's tons of people that look like me and families that look like me who didn't have people with financial education or background to share that information with people. And so I just felt God calling me to share my message with people, with as many people as possible. And so when I heard you talk about books, I knew I had to go that route.
You just knew you had to do it. Okay, so he mentioned a spiritual vein in his wanting to write a book. Let me ask all of you, how many of you feel as if higher power wants you to write a book? Okay, so almost 100%. So talk about a why. Like somebody is waiting for your message right now. They have the problem you could solve right now. The faster you can get that message to them and make that message resonate in their lives, the more quickly you change their life. I was shocked when I asked a seminar audience, a real estate seminar audience, there were 500 people in the room, and I would say to them, how many of you feel as if you're here because it's just part of your purpose in life to learn this information? It's like it's a spiritual thing. Just like I got here with you, it was like, yeah, I'm supposed to be doing this. And you're supposed to write this book. Just let that resonate with you, okay? Your why. Why have you always wanted to do it? Well, for me, I didn't know why I had planted that thought plan in my head to write a book when I had never done anything worthy of writing a book. But I did. And so I wrote it, and it's reached millions of people, right? So I think it's part of your purpose It's part of what you do. Higher power, however you understand Him, whatever your understanding there is. I want you to feel as if you're the conduit. You're the funnel. That the message is going to flow through you. And you're going to discover that as you write, words will come that you had no idea where they came from. And you'll go, that was good. Where did that come from? That's not one of my thoughts, right? And the same thing with speaking. Sometimes you'll speak and you'll not even know what is going to come out until it comes out, right? So you're the messenger of a message. And so almost to feel as if you were destined to write this book. Now, when it comes to the belief in higher power, you've heard me speak about that before. I have a very strong belief in a higher power. Does higher power know which books are going to be bestsellers this year? In advance. Does higher power know which books will become bestsellers this year? Yes or no? Okay, now, we'll have some arguments with that. Some people go, no, of course he doesn't know the future. Well, see, higher power is outside of time. We're in time. Higher power is outside of time. Means can see the beginning from the end. Sees it all. Yeah, higher power knows which books will be number one bestsellers this year. Will your book be one of those? Now, regardless of what you think of Bill Gates, whether you like him or don't like him, whether you think he's a good guy or a bad guy, he got the computer. He got it. And there were thousands of people who could have gotten it. Why did he get it? Well, he worked hard at it and probably pulled some shenanigans to figure it out. But the bottom line, he got the software for the most important invention of all time. Did higher power know that he would give away almost all of it? All the billions that he got. And he would get hundreds of his billionaire friends to commit in writing to give away half of their fortunes to less fortunate people. Did higher power know that? I think so. And therefore, I think higher power said, that guy gets the computer. Now, when it comes to your writing of your best-selling book, do you want your book to reach larger audiences? And I think the answer to that question is yes. So it's almost like higher power, however you refer to him or her or it, help me here. Help me say the words you want me to say. Help me get the message that you want me to get out there into the world. Because there are people who need it. And I want to be the messenger. Now, it's just a tiny sliver of a messenger. You may only reach a few thousand, a few 100,000, a few million. It's a tiny sliver of the people on the planet. But your sliver belongs to you. And your name is on it. And they are waiting for you right now. So that's about all the spiritual stuff I'll go into. But I just want you to realize it's when you tap into the kind of power that knows the future, you tap into big stuff, right? So here's our Earth. These people are waiting for you right now. When you're looking back from the moon, this is what you see. And this is a beautiful jewel. We get to spend about 100 years on this planet. And then it's gone. We're gone. Where do we go? That's a discussion for another time. Did you see that earth before you were born? Did you exist before you were born? See, we don't know, do we? We're not 100% certain. All I can tell you is my opinion. My opinion is, yeah, you saw this place before you were born, and you said, I want to go there. And I know it's going to be hard. It may be the hardest learning experience in my existence. But I want to go. And you came. And here you are. And we don't know how long you're going to be here. So you want to make sure your message stays here after you're no longer here, right? It's a magnificent universe, and we want to be part of it, right? There are billions of galaxies just like that. Billions of galaxies just like that. And we just live on one little tiny Earth at one very, very short period of time, and we want to make sure that our message stays and can help as many people as possible, right? So, number one, what do you want to say? What do I want to say? And how can I say that in a way that resonates with people? What do I want to say? What's your message? Your message has got to touch on two buttons. The first button is it has to be an urgent problem that somebody has or a burning passion. That's why they'll spend money for your book. They have an urgent problem or a burning passion. If you can link both of them together, it's even better. You have to get them motivated to take money out of their pocket and give you money to be able to read your solution to their urgent problem or their burning passion, right? And most books don't do this. Most books just share information. But if you want a bestseller, it has to solve one of those two things. Let's take my books. Nothing Down. What are those? What two parts of how do these two pieces make Nothing Down, a proven program that shows you how to buy real estate with little or no money down, that makes it a best-selling quality title? Yes.
It has both of those. Urgent problem is they have no money.
Yes.
And the passion is they want.
They want real estate. It's the American dream. So almost everybody has a burning passion to have a piece of real estate, and if it solves the problem how they get into it with Nothing Down. Now, Creating Wealth, when I wrote Creating Wealth, I struggled with the title because there's no subtitle for Creating Wealth. It's just Creating Wealth. That's it. It also was a #1 New York Times bestseller. How did that solve those two problems? Because a narrow niche of people want to create wealth. It's 1 in 7 of the people in the United States are entrepreneur-minded. And entrepreneurs, almost all of them, love to create wealth. It's just what they love to do. And so it was a narrower niche, but it was a burning passion for some people. So they bought 1 million copies of it. How many entrepreneurs are there? If it's 1 in 7, that means there's 15%. That means that there are 50 million people. 50 million people want to create wealth. And my book, The Challenge. That's the title. The subtitle is Send Me to Any City, Take Away My Wallet, Give Me a $100 bill. No, sorry. Send me to any unemployment line. Let me select someone who's broke, out of work, and discouraged. In 2 days' time, I'll teach them the secrets of wealth. In 90 days, they'll be back on their feet with 5,000 cash in the bank, never to set foot in an unemployment line again. That's the subtitle. Why does those suck? Well, let's see. An urgent problem. Okay, so how many unemployed people, broke and unemployed, discouraged, go into bookstores to buy a book called The Challenge? Well, nobody goes in the bookstore because they can't afford the book. And if you want to make some money, $5,000 is really not that much money. So when you think about it, it just broke all the rules. And that's why it only sold 60,000 copies. Just a terrible title, terrible. So, now, who do you want to say it to? You're going to have an avatar, somebody that's destined to fit the perfect slot of who you want to talk to. Your avatars, your ideal customers, their fingerprint is just, it resonates with them. When your message goes out there, they're going to hear it and they're going to go, I want that. I want to resonate with that, right? So, Where do you want your readers to live? Where, in terms of demographics, where are they? How do you find them? Ultimately, you'll form a database of people, and the demographics will say how old they are, where they live, how many children they have, what do they do for a living, male, female, whatever. Where are they? Well, obviously, they're here somewhere, and we got to go find them, right? How many lives do you want to touch? See, I want to take you in a bigger space, bigger thinking. You came in the room because you wanted to write a book, maybe a best-selling book, yes, but I'd rather you think, how many lives you want to touch? For how long? It's a much, much bigger question. There's millions of books that have been published. Your name's going to go on some of them, and it's going to reach out. When will you be ready to launch your book? So some of you will have your book ready to go in 90 days or less. Some of you will take a couple of years. I'm going to try to shorten that time frame for you so you can get out there as quick as possible. And then finally, how will you do it? Now that's what we're here to talk about. How do you pull it off? But we have to ask those other questions first, right? So the stupid mistakes that all beginning authors makes, written by me because I made them all, and I don't want you to make them like I did, right? And most people are pretty confused when it comes to having a best-selling book. Like, how do you get a book published? How do I find a publisher? How do I write it? I've never written a book before. How do I organize it? All those kinds of things. Don't expect your book. Mistake number one, don't expect your book to make you rich and famous. Gentlemen, yesterday I waited all day for you to come and get my novel and to publish it and make me rich and famous. You did not show up. Were you not feeling well? Most people, when you got your book published, they kind of expect that it's going to make you rich and famous. Well, traditionally published books will sell 5,000 copies. Is that going to make you rich and famous? No. If you get a self-published book sells 200 copies. The reason that a published book will sell more is because they have the access to all the bookstores in the world, and at least in our country. So they can distribute the book so it at least gets seen by some eyeballs, but a self-published author doesn't have that kind of advantage. There's ways to get your self-published book into a bookstore, but it's a little harder to do. So don't quit your day job. Don't go with traditional publishers. You need to create a platform so that you can show that you can sell your book. Here's what happens with a traditional published book. They'll work to create a beautiful book. They'll hire a fabulous artist to make your cover look great. They'll hire an editor to help you create the content and so it looks nice. They'll hire a copy editor to make sure all the commas are in the right places. They will hire a publicist to get your word out there. They'll put you on some talk shows maybe, as they've done for me. But after about 30 days, it's over. They have another book coming down the pipeline. And if you're in Simon & Schuster or Random House, they have hundreds of books coming down the pipeline. And yours was just one of them, and it had one shot. And 30 days later, if it doesn't really sell very well, the bookstores will send your books back to the publisher. Then the publisher will call you and say, would you like to buy your books? And they'll cut the price in half, and they'll sell you your books back to you so you could go sell them anyway. Now, if you don't buy their books, they're going to remainder them. You know what that means? They rip off the cover, and they destroy it. And therefore, the book is destroyed. And then they mulch it up into paper, and they turn it back into other books. And this is the publishing game that most authors don't know. And you don't want that to happen to your book. That's happened to a couple of my books, so I know what I'm talking about here. Fortune, very possible. You could possibly make a fortune, but first you go create a platform so you know you can always sell your own book, and then the publisher, they're interested, right? So fame, maybe. if that's important to you. And influence, absolutely. How much do you get from a traditional publisher? What is the royalty rate? Generally speaking, if it's a hardcover book, it'll be 15%. That means if it sells for 20 bucks, you're going to get $3. The publisher is going to sell your book to a bookstore for about 50% on the dollar. So if it's a $20 book, the publisher will get $10. They'll give you 3 of those $10. All the rest of their profit will come from the 7. The bookstores will sell your books and get any profit above $10. So 15%. Okay, so if you suddenly sell 5,000 copies at $3 a copy, that's $15,000 in the lifetime of the book. It's not going to make you rich. And it certainly won't make you famous if you're only selling 5,000 copies. So it's not a game you want to play. You want to control your rights, and we'll talk about that. The disadvantage of publishing is that they take all the rights. They take the video rights, the audio rights, a lot of the publishing rights, and they control them, and you have to ask their permission for you to be able to sell to somebody else. And then they want their cut. And of course, they published it and they invested in you, so they want to make their money back. And I finally figured out this game. I said to the publisher for the 1 Minute Millionaire, we said to the publisher, we want the rights to the book. And our agent had to fight really hard for this. We said, we want to be able to sell 5,000 copies of the book ourselves. We may give that book away. And we want to be able to buy our book from you at your cost plus 10%. So instead of 50 cents on the dollar that the bookstore usually charge, we said, we want to buy it for like 20 cents on the dollar. We want to spend about $2 for your book. In this case, it was $1.61 for 1 Minute Millionaire plus 10%. It was a little just under $2. And they would print the books and send them to us, and we got them for $2 a piece. Now, publishers hate this because they make their money when they stop selling it through bookstores, and we have to keep selling it ourselves, and they charge us half the money. So they hate it. Well, we demanded it. And this is one of the rules you're going to have to keep. If you're going to publish with a publisher, you say, I need to be able to give away my book as part of my seminars, as part of my coaching program, as part of my advantages. And they're going to hate it. Therefore, you have to find a publisher who's willing to do that. And there are a lot of little tricks like that that ordinary authors don't understand how to do. And I want to teach you. That's the disadvantages. The biggest books that were ever self-published first became bestsellers as a self-published book, and then they became traditionally published, like the 1 Minute Manager and Celestine Prophecy. These were self-published first. So it's okay for you to go self-publish first. You might feel as if it's not as respectable. Well, 40 years ago, it wasn't. Today, 2 million people find it respectable enough to do it, right? So have your cake and eat it too. You can get your fortune, fame, and influence, and you can do that by being a self-published and a published author. So that's the route we're going to take. Mistake number 3, don't write a book about you and your story. And this is a hard one, because you have a story, and you want people to read your story, and nobody gives a crap about your story. Really, they don't care. And this is the fastest way for me to throw out a book. I read the first chapter, and I do a ratio, the you-I ratio in your book. The strongest word is you, and the weakest word is I. And if I read your book and I find that the you-I ratio is upside down, that means there's 10 times more I's than U's, then this book is not going to sell. Nobody cares about your story. Nobody cares. And you say, but my story is important for ordinary people to realize that if I can do it, you can do it. And I got to tell you, nobody cares about your story. Nobody cares. They only care about how that book is going to change their life. Now, your story can be in there. In my book, Nothing Down, my story is in there. And I talk about how I overcome certain fears, and this is a technique that I used, but it's all you. And it's in marketing, any kind of marketing, you'll realize that you is a powerful word, and I is not a very strong word for marketing. So it's just show me your manuscript. Let's do a UI ratio. That's a stupid mistake. Don't do it. Nobody wants your autobiography. Even if you become rich and famous, very few people want to buy your autobiography. You have to be rich and infamous for them to buy your autobiography, right? Don't write your autobiography yet. One day you will write your autobiography. And the only people who read it will probably be your family members, and even they won't read it. It'll probably be your great-great-grandchildren who will find a dusty copy of it somewhere, and it will continue your legacy, right? You'll have to pay your kids to read your book. My wife hasn't even read my books. So, mistake number 4, don't think of your book as just a book. A book is not a book, it's a business. The reason you're writing a book is because it helps support your business, your multiple streams of income. The info business is the best business in the world because what's the profit margin on information? It's 95% profit margin, where most other things have hard costs. You know, this table, somebody sold somebody us this table, you know, it's a hard cost. Probably 50% of it was hard cost. But with information, it's 99% free, 99, no cost. So it's just, if you're an entrepreneur, you love profit, information business is the best one. You can monetize it in so many ways. Your book is just going to be a lead to bring them into a funnel where other kinds of information will be available for you to offer them if they want it. Now, you may not want to offer all of these things to them, but it's a no-brainer. You've got books and seminars and public speaking, information products, coaching, consulting, licensing, affiliates, sponsorships, joint ventures, publishing, games, and this is just 12. There's probably another 100 to go on top of this. But as you look at this list, how many of you are doing at least 3 of these things right now? You say, raise your hands on that. So your book is just going to make this times 10. When your book comes out, you'll be able to much more easily do all of these things. I haven't done all of them, but I've done most of them. Stupid mistake number 5. Don't write a single word until you plan your funnel. No publisher understands a funnel. All these thousands of books that are going out there, there's no funnel to them. Somebody shows me their manuscript, and I'll read the manuscript and I'll go, where does it tell me that there is more information for them to buy if they want it? And they say, oh, well, that's I don't want to put that in my book. Now, the purpose of a book is a lead generator. The purpose of a book is to generate a lead. And if you haven't generated a lead, you failed at the number one thing you need to do. The purpose of a book is to generate a lead, because as they come into your funnel, they may come into your seminars and coaching and co-authorships, all kinds of ways of doing it, right? So with a funnel, for a beginning information marketer, information is addicting. I want you to think about that. Have you ever purchased from one person many different types of information? It may have started with a book, but eventually went to a seminar, a coaching program, a trip, you know. There's just so many ways of doing it. When they want your information, they want all of you. And they may not be able to afford you, but they want all of it as much as they can, right? So information is addicting, and you need to realize that once they like you, they will become addicted to you. Well, that's in a positive way. They'll want more of you. So let's take Tony Robbins. Yeah, I went to a Tony Robbins. When I met Tony, I'm going through my publisher's offices and I see a copy of Unlimited Power on the shelf. They publish his book. I go, well, that's interesting. I like that title. Can I have that book? Since I'm an author in that publishing house, sure, take it. I read it, I'm having some fun with it, and I'm on a talk show with him in 2019, what year was it? 1986. 1986. And we're in Detroit. And we're on a talk show. And I'm promoting the paperback edition of Creating Wealth. 1986 was not a good year for me. Up the canyon here, at Sundance Ski Resort, is a beautiful set of mountain homes around the ski resort, and we built our mountain home right there at the base of a ski resort, of a ski run. And it was 10,000 square feet of the most beautiful architecture you have ever seen. Fabulous. Well, in 1986, an avalanche came down and destroyed that cabin and completely wiped it out. I'd used that cabin as a collateral to buy some other real estate, and the banker didn't like what I was buying, and so he made me blanket mortgage everything I owned, including my cabin. And when the cabin was destroyed, a chunk of my assets were wiped out, and the insurance company refused to pay. So now I have no asset, zero money going to come in from insurance. Now, we had to fight the insurance company for years. But the point is, during that time, the banker saw that there was no asset there and went and took my other assets. And so $1.7 million could not pay back, and so the banker took everything and completely wiped me out. I had to start again from scratch. So in 2006, I'm on a talk show to promote my book called Creating Wealth, having just lost all of my wealth. 1986. I'm on a talk show. I say, you can be rich. Having lots of money is wonderful. You can start again with nothing. I mean, I was so incongruent. My body was screaming, don't listen to this guy. He has nothing left. The guy who wrote nothing down had nothing left. Tony was on that same show with me, and so was Oprah. Oprah was first, and then Tony, and I was last, because I was the best-selling author of the time. And Tony met me as I came off. And he met me in the hallway, big, tall guy, and he said, you didn't want to be on that show, did you? What the balls of this guy to say that to me? And he says, you're not congruent. What's the matter with you? What's going on in your life? Your message is screaming, don't listen to me. And I said, well, it's been a bad year. And he said, well, then don't go on television and talk about it until you figure it out. You need to walk on fire. And so that summer, I walked on fire and got myself back congruent again. Still took 5 years to dig out of the hole, and the bankruptcy that happened was not fun. But what I'm trying to say is, I was addicted to what Tony did for me. And I read his books, and I walked on his fires, and I walked 3 or 4 times I walked on fire and bought all kinds of the things he's done, because I'm addicted to information that works. And your information is going to addict people to your message, and they're going to want more and more and more of you. So happy readers always want more. So if you only learn one thing, learn this. This is the funnel. You have information at the top of your funnel. All of you are marketers, you understand funnels. But as the information on the left-hand side and experience on the bottom, the more deeper the funnel goes, the more the price goes up, because you become part of the game, right? So at the top, lots of stuff you give away for free. We all do this as marketers. You'll probably give away your book for free. The book you're going to write, that I'm going to show you how to write, you're going to give it away. Then you take it down into more and more expensive items from 50 to 500 to 1,000, 5,000, 25,000. Your funnel will look different than this, but this is kind of like a basic funnel. Leads coming in at the top in all kinds of different ways. Your book has to bring in a lead in the door. You don't want to write it unless it captures a name. So you're going to give lots of little goodies at the front to make sure that they capture. How many books actually do get read? What percentage of the books go beyond the first chapter? It's like 75% of the people don't read beyond the first chapter. So the hook has to be in the first chapter, because most people will not read your book all the way to the very end, and then at the very end there's a place for them to send in a free thingy, whatever. No, the thingy's got to be right up front, maybe even before the first chapter. You got to get that name, right? So you're going to create a funnel. We're going to do this later on tomorrow. So this is kind of like the basic funnel. It's a free product, a low ticket item, a medium ticket item, and a high ticket item. Most of you who have a funnel have one just like this. If you don't have this, we'll be creating one later on tomorrow. Is it going to be word of mouth, Facebook ads, social media? Two Facebook ads. Google AdWords should be in there. Whatever their ways are that you have for generating the name, the book will just be one of those ways, right? So, stupid mistake number 6. Now, I think stupid mistake number 6 would be not going to the restroom before we continue. So I don't want puddles of water underneath the tables here. So we're going to take a quick 10-minute break and see you back here in just a few minutes. See ya.